Hi guys. My first video went a little long, so I need to do a second part. Didn't think I'd ramble on so much. Thought I'd be trying to find things to talk about, but obviously I don't have that problem. Alright, well, it cut off in my belly shot, so I'll redo the belly shot, and then I wanted to talk about my birth experiences with my 4 other kids. Alright. So, there's my belly. Like I said, I'm 11 weeks, and that's pretty darn big for 11 weeks. And I've only gained, well, I'm not sure how much I've gained because I didn't weigh myself from January when my sister got married to right after I found out I was pregnant, so I might have gained 3 pounds between then, but I don't think 113 is too bad starting out in pregnancy. Okay, I want to talk about the my birth experiences with my other 4 kids. My first child was a son. His name is Nathan. He was born in September of 99. Let's see. I was married for, I think, 3 months, and then I got pregnant. So he was born a month after our 1-year anniversary. My pregnancy with him, I didn't have any complications. I gained almost 60 pounds with him. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold. So I got really big, and I hate looking at pictures back from when I was pregnant with him because my face is so fat. And the pictures, and my arms are huge, and I just, I hate it. Hate the way I looked. But I was pregnant, and I want to make sure that, you know, I ate enough and that I got enough, you know, things out of food to go to him so that he would be healthy. I was 11 weeks, or not 11 weeks, 11 days overdue with him. I couldn't believe the doctors let me go 11 days over. I was huge, and my stretch marks were so bad, and if I just barely scratched lightly over them, they would bleed. And they just let me go over 11 days. So they scheduled an induction. So I went in, I believe it was a Wednesday, but I had went in for the induction at, I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning. And so since it was my first, it took a really long time. At first I had to go in this little room because they didn't have any open rooms at the time that I got there. So they were getting ready to discharge some other patients. And so I had to go in this little room, and they, you know, hooked the little monitor onto me to get his heart rate. And I guess he wasn't moving, and his heart rate wasn't fluctuating enough for them, so they made me drink some apple juice. I drank that, and then he started to move around and stuff. And I was in the room for maybe an hour, and then they had a room open and had it ready. So I went ahead, and they walked me down to my room, and as I was walking to my room, which they had already started the Pitocin when I was in the little room when they were monitoring me, And when we were walking to the room, my water started leaking down my leg, and I didn't know what it was at first. And I was like, I feel something leaking down my leg. And they're like, well, when we get in there and you get on the bed, we'll check. So we get into the room, and I lift my leg to put it on the bed. And the nurse just looks as I'm getting up, and she's like, yep, that was your water. So I didn't have a big gush. It was just like, I don't know. I mean, it was just a very slow trickle. So it was a very slow leak. I think I was in labor for, I think they said 12 hours, and I was in active labor, what they consider active labor, for 12 hours. So I was actually in labor longer than that, but not in active labor at the beginning. So I was in actual active labor for 12 hours. And then they had to turn off my Pitocin when I was 10 centimeters because they had to find the doctor. I did have an epidural with him. I'm going to bounce back and forth, trying try to get the important details out. I'm not sure how long I was in labor before, but the doctor came in and he was going to break my water, and I said, well, my water's already leaking, so he didn't have to do that. And he said, well, you're only this far. I don't remember how many centimeters I was at that time. And he said, well, you're really not going to dilate unless you relax. And I just remember thinking, how in the world do you relax when you're in labor? And it's your first baby, and you're on Pitocin being induced, and they have this thing like blasting the Pitocin through you. And so I told him to go ahead, and I wanted the epidural. So they gave me the epidural, and he said they were putting some kind of narcotic in it to help me rest. So after I got that, it took them like 2 or 3 tries to even get the epidural in. I had the lady that did it, I'm not trying to be mean, but she was an older lady, and she was kind of, I don't know, she was kind of rude to me because it was my first baby, you know, and I didn't know what to expect with an epidural. And she numbed me, and that was fine. And then when they put that other thing in your back, that really hard tube that they put in your back before they thread in the little catheter thing, I jumped, and she kind of got mean with me. She's like, don't move! And I was like, okay, sorry. So, I mean, it's like, if you're in that position and you have that job, then you should be a little kinder to the people because they're in pain anyway. And, I mean, that was my first baby, like I said, and I had never had an epidural. I didn't know what to expect with it. It's like, you just be kind, be like, oh, just don't move, you need to hold still, just be kind. So, I got that, and then, like I said, they had to shut off my Pitocin later that night because I was 10 centimeters, and they had to wait for the doctor who was in another hospital delivering a baby. They had to wait on him to get to the hospital. So he finally got there, and they turned my Pitocin back on. And then it was time to push, and I had him. I don't know how long it took me to push him out because I was so drugged up at that time. And he came out. They had to do an episiotomy, which I didn't feel because I had the epidural. And he came out, and they kind of sat him on me. I got to see him for a minute. And then they had trouble getting the fluid out, and it took them a while. They had to put the little tube thing down in his lungs to suck out the fluid and to, clear his airway so he could breathe. And I think because he was overdue, I think that's why he had so much trouble, with them getting it all out and him, like breathing and everything. Because, I mean, he was 11 days over the due date. So, I mean, your placenta starts to get old at the end. And he was huge, or he felt huge. He was 8 pounds, half an ounce. And he was 21.5 inches long, I think. So he was pretty big for me. I'm only like 5'1". So, I mean, I'm not that big. But luckily, I was big enough to pass him through. So, he was born. Everything, went okay. I left the next day from the hospital, and he ended up developing jaundice. And the pediatrician just had me nurse him, like normal. And then after I got done nursing him, they had me give him like an ounce of Pedialyte and told me to sit him in the sun in his car seat because the sun helps to draw the jaundice out. So he did well with that, and his levels went down and he was fine, and now he's 11, and he's almost as big as I am, and he seems to think that's so funny, which I told him that that's not saying much because, I mean, I'm not that tall, so that doesn't mean that he's super tall just because he's, almost as tall as me. I'm going to go ahead and talk about my second baby real quick, and then I'm going to have to do a third video. I just keep rambling on. Okay, my second daughter, my son was 6 months old when I found out I was pregnant with her. So everything went well. I walked around for 3 weeks with a bulging bag of water and contractions, and the doctor was so surprised my water never broke. And finally, I was having contractions because he stripped my membranes. That's where when they're checking you, they kind of take their fingers and run it in between the baby's water sac and your cervix to loosen up any stuff in there. So they did that, and that caused me to have contractions, but they wouldn't get in a good pattern, and they weren't the right strength for them. So I went into the hospital, and they checked me, and they called him, and he said, what, go ahead and just start her on Pitocin, because he knew, that I was kind of miserable because I was 3 centimeters dilated for like 3 weeks. I had this bulging bag of water, and I was just ready for it to be over because I was tired of all the contractions. So, they admitted me, and they had to wait because they had a C-section with twins. So I was in the hospital for a few hours before they even started the Pitocin. And she was born the next morning at 8 something, and they had to actually run and search for the doctor. I didn't have an epidural with her. I had a shot of an IV med. But they finally found him, and he came in, and it didn't take very many pushes, and she was out. And she was 6 pounds, 14 ounces. She was healthy. She had a full head of black hair, and she was gorgeous. She was like this little porcelain doll. Her skin, I have Indian in my family, and she looked like a little Indian baby. She was so pretty. Her skin was really pretty. And she did well. She nursed till she was 8 months old. Now she's 10. I think she's going on 16. So I'm gonna have to stop this video, and I will post another one with my other two, my 6-year-old and my 3-year-old, about the birth experience. Bye.